After the killing of its soldiers, America succumbed to operations, the first of which were bombing by drones that focused on the border strip between Syria and Iraq on both sides, reaching the cities of Al-Bukamal and Al-Mayadeen east of Deir ez-Zor, near the Turkey border, especially in sites in Al-Haydariya and Al-Shibal in the desert of Al-Mayadeen, targeting militias affiliated with Iran. The result was the killing of a few members. They are non-Iranians, according to many sources who talk about the continuation of operations for days and perhaps weeks against areas in Iraq and Syria. Just a few days ago, the world was talking, and nothing was reported about what audacity Iran had reached after groups affiliated with Tehran attacked an American base on the Jordanian and Syrian borders and killed for the first time 3 people, American soldiers together, and dozens were wounded. And today the world has become the mouthpiece of any decline and retreat that America has reached. President Joe Biden, who raged and fought for a response that would break Iranian cues back, is content with attacks over a period of several days in Iraq and Syria, through which the most powerful army in the world has targeted targets for militias affiliated with Iran here and there, including military facilities or personnel. And although America is trying to convince the world that undermining the Iranian influence, paralyzing its activity, and curbing its movements does not mean getting involved in a direct confrontation that will result in the expansion of the scope conflict. Today, it is enough for there to be a strategy of paralyzing the ability of the state militias and reducing their capacity to the point that prevents repeated targeting in areas. Others, not to mention those bases that are less secure, but Iran, of course, does not see things from this perspective. Rather, all Iranian political and military circles talk about a victory achieved through deterrence, as America was afraid of striking Iran directly for fear of getting involved in a war in which Tehran would use weapons on the day of resurrection, which is the name Iran gives to it. Its missiles, which it says will flood the Red Sea and close the Strait of Hormuz, will explode the region. These are also the ballistic missiles that the Houthis keep igniting this sea and destroying everyone who thinks of sailing in it, in addition to cutting the main submarine cables for the internet around the world, which all pass under the waters of the Red Sea near Yemen. And in order to, we heard John Kirby on board the presidential plane say that it is very possible that you will see a gradual approach in this situation. That is, not just one measure, but the possibility of taking several measures, which is what America seems to want to head on, not only to save face in front of the world that I believe will be attacked. Qasima is approaching Iran at least as much as the strike on the assassination of Qasem Soleimani during the days when Trump ruled the White House. Indeed, America has now learned the necessity of paralyzing Iranian-to-mess militias, which have become an imminent threat to its influence in many geographical regions in the Middle East, and thus America can move on, little by little, from bombing loyalist militias. Iran may want to assassinate Iranian officers in Syria or Iraq or attack Iranian naval assets in the Arabian Gulf, but the snowball of American responses, whatever its direction, still does not satisfy many Republicans who support a radical response, who see no alternative to striking targets in Iran and devastating military retaliation against Iranian forces, whether inside Iran, across the Middle East, while many Democrats believe that a single strike inside Iran means risking a major war, and this is what Iran knows and is playing on by betting on the delicate balance of action and reaction with the United States of America. As Uranayo Ekdemir Persian still tells it that the American reaction, the escalation of its militias against American military installations, will most likely be based on Washington's keenness not to escalate. And although many indicators, given the American strikes against Iranian militias, say that Tehran has won the bet against American escalation. There remain several scenarios and perhaps American escalation steps that will be successive, according to analysis centers. Military defense, the first of which is targeting the movements of pro-Tehran militias coming from Iraq through the al-Bukamal border, crossing in conjunction with their movements in Syria, especially in the vicinity of the security and military squares, starting from the al-Bukamal, crossing all the way to the Imam base. Therefore, the American strikes here focus on targeting the movements and positioning of the militias on the western bank of the river. The Euphrates starts from the vicinity of the al-Bukamal al-Qaim crossing, passing through the vicinity of Deir ez-Zor military airport, which has become the largest weight in the training project for Iranian marches under the supervision of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. As for the second scenario, or we can call it the scenario simultaneous with the first, it is based on targeting the movements of militias linked to Iran after they reach their points. The new military operation is similar to the recent operations of a leading airport in the al-Nujaba movement near the main entrance to the Iraqi Ministry of Defense in the capital, Baghdad. This scenario entails risks, the most important of which is that America will accuse Iraq of providing support to the militias, especially to the Iraqi Hezbollah involved in the bombing of the American base. Therefore, Baghdad TM's provision logistical cover to those militias will be followed by strikes. From here, it is possible to move to the third scenario, or it may also be a simultaneous step with the two previous ones by targeting the suspicious movements of militia fighters and equipment in the vicinity of the Jerf al-Sakhar base in Bayb al-Janubi Governorate, Baghdad, especially since the Jerf al-Sakhar base is the main stronghold of the gathering of the so-called Islamic resistance in Iraq is the problem in October 2023, and it includes the coalition of military forces that were removed by their political representatives during the formation of the government, the coordination framework. After this strike, it is possible that America will move to bomb several centers of the militias, which together form an interior operations room for full coordination between the Iraqi factions and their allies in Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. And now we can highlight shedding light on the fourth stage, perhaps, of the American strikes, which the Military Research Analysis Center say will be based on targeting the areas where the Fate 110 ballistic missile launchers are located, which were used in attacks to target the vicinity of the American consulate, in addition to the vicinity of the Harrier base in the Arbi Governorate in northern Iraq, and this is the scenario. It is based on the size and extent of the momentum demand revenge, and because these responses are still part of efforts to prevent the expansion of the confrontation in the American-Iranian attrition operations in the Arab region. What Washington fears is that Tehran is exploiting the weak American position in light of the priority of the American elections as a gateway to using the policy of maximum pressure on the brink of the abyss and exploiting the results. Pressure to achieve the highest gains in the ballistic nuclear negotiating files. America also fears that Iran will believe that it can respond through new movements outside the scope of the previous military rules of engagement to include the arenas of conflict on the Lebanese-Israeli front, or even revitalize the Yemeni arena more and more by supporting more powerful strikes from the issue this in the Red Sea and investing in the missile capabilities that the group possesses in Yemen to disrupt maritime shipping lines in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. And now that it has become clear that the American scenario is simply based on a snowball of successive responses outside Iran that may develop into inside Iran if there is some response from Tehran, which may speak with senior leaders outside its borders, then perhaps the climax scenario will come, which is less likely, but not unlikely, in which one of the main sites of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard inside Iran will be targeted to the degree that allows its movement and activity to be temporarily disrupted. However, the most realistic scenario remains that American strikes will remain within the framework of the Iranian militias in Syria. While Iran is content with condemning Iraq, the wave of revenge whose broad lines were agreed upon has ended